Hello, I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. Welcome to a new episode of ATV-TALK and Motorsports Podcast. Please join us every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We bring you interviews with industry professionals, live events, live news about the motorsports industry in every episode. Enjoy the show. David Ham, welcome to ATV Talk. How are you, man?
Couldn't be any better. It feels fabulous.
All right. It's almost Christmas, and you were telling me that it was 75 degrees there.
Yeah, out in our Arizona desert area, it's in the mid 70s today, so it doesn't quite have that Christmas vibe in the air, but we're gonna put on the Christmas spirit nonetheless.
What's it like being there in Arizona? You know, shorts, t-shirt, no sweatshirt, and there's Christmas lights up.
Yeah, I get up pretty early in the morning, so it's still dark outside when I usually exit the house here, and it's a bit chilly in the air. But again, I'm walking out the front door with shorts on because I know in a couple hours it's going to be 75 degrees. So I just deal with a little chill in the morning, and by 10 o'clock we're feeling happy.
Nice. That's pretty awesome. Hey, you've had a pretty eventful year. You keep me updated more than most people. I'm getting little emails from you or text messages from you with updates on your year, which I super appreciate that. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the last couple pictures you sent me that were just all of these different trophies?
We had a really great year. Especially being up there in the age group, we won't talk about that, but I've been racing pretty steadily for almost 15 years now, and this was the first year to have that. I don't want to say anything to jinx me, but knock on the wood here, we had a perfect season. I mean, we didn't lose a race all year. Won the Work Series, went after Best in the Desert with a Vegas Sereno new team for me to get on, and we won that as well. So got on top of the box every race I put on for 2024. So that was a pretty amazing year.
Never happened before for you, has it?
Not for me in a three-wheeler. Like I say, I've been gone after it pretty steadily and pretty hard for near 15 years and never had the year like we had this year.
You know, since you and I have been talking and having you on the show and really getting involved with it, you've had a couple great years back to back. 2022 was a good year for you. 2023 was no slouch. It wasn't as eventful as 24 and 22, but you've been winning races. You've been, pretty much dominating the West Coast three-wheeler world.
No, I've been blessed to have the right people in my corner, and I couldn't do it by myself at all. So I've had some amazing trike builders from day one, and it's always awesome when you're sitting on that starting line and look around and feel like you're on the most superior machine there is, and you wouldn't trade your machine for anyone else's machine on that starting line. It's a great feeling to leave the gate like that, and yeah, the results have came just because we've been very, very prepared.
That's awesome. That's what it takes to be a winner. I do want to touch on something that, we just talked about earlier about the age bracket. You're not getting any younger. Three-wheelers, I don't think are going to get any easier to ride. How much longer is Dave Ham going to push the envelope?
There's still some things that I have on my outlook that I haven't accomplished yet, but going looking at it and just looking back at the last 15 years and remembering where I was, 15 years ago, entering my first three-wheeler race. Uh, I never in a million years thought I could do what I've done, or even would be doing it this long and have the success that I've had. But again, I think just looking back at it, been blessed with just so many amazing people that have helped me out along the journey. This next year for 2025, we've been talking a lot, and we're going to go after a series that I've yet to touch on, and hopefully have some great results in that series, and get the same great people that I've been blessed to have helped me reach those goals that we have set for next year, 2025, and we're gonna see how it goes.
That brings up some questions about the development of the modern day three-wheeler. you know, you've been at the forefront kind of this, or with people that are in the forefront of it. And we're adapting four-stroke motors that were never designed to run in a three-wheeler. We're putting them in three-wheelers. You're doing something that some other guys aren't doing. You're actually having chassis built for your three-wheelers, correct?
That is correct. We're kind of doing reverse engineering, if you want to call it that. The bike that I ran all this year, with the exception of Vegas to Reno, was basically a quad. So the frame started its life out as a quad, and with the help of TPC, we turned it into a three wheeler. And so back in the 80s, if you can remember, when the whole three wheeler thing got that bad rap, they were taking three wheelers, and there was some wonky kits out there available where they were turning them into quads. We're doing the exact opposite of that now. We're taking quads and turning them into three wheelers, and playing around with different motor packages to put in those three wheelers, and getting some pretty good results. I say that the trikes that I've been blessed to ride have been superior to anything else that's on the starting line with me.
You know, with the upside down forks that are bigger and stronger, that allows the machine to handle so much more because that front end can take damage that the traditional 250R can't, correct?
Correct. I started racing on 250Rs and 350Xs, even dabbled with 200Xs a little bit going back 15 years ago. And the riding style on those type of machines, at least with the suspension that I was dealing with at that time, you had to ride the rear end and try to keep that front end off the ground as much as you could over the rough stuff, just because the front suspension wasn't adequate enough to take that kind of abuse. But now with these modern trikes and the modern dirt bike forks that we're putting on them, you got so much more travel, and it's so much adjustable and usable travel. And yeah, I find myself changing my riding style a lot and riding the front forks. Putting a lot of my weight up on the front end in different scenarios, where on the older machines I just couldn't do that. It was almost the opposite. So old dogs can learn a little bit of new tricks, I guess.
But you're also not a little man. I mean, no, I'm not trying to make it sound like you're big and heavy, but you're a tall guy with long arms, long legs, and what, 6'3", 6'4"?
It depends on this haircut I got, but 6'2", probably shrinking a little bit at my age, but yeah, with this haircut, if I need a haircut, I'd probably 6'3", if you're taking that.
Okay, okay. Uh, so when you get on a 200X, I mean, that was never designed for somebody your size.
No, in fact, I can remember the first time that I ever sat on a TPC trike. It was the first time I ever felt like I was on a three wheeler that fit me. And I was like, wow, this feels so much like it's set up for someone over 6 foot tall. Or I had to do some things on my 250Rs, and to make them feel more comfortable to me. Lowering the foot pegs, raising the bars, putting a big seat on it, things like that were just things to make the bike fit a bigger frame and a heavier person. But now with these big modern three wheelers that we're building today, they're just bigger machines. They're set up for taller people. They fit my frame better, and those that are probably under 5'6" probably feel like they can't ride these bigger machines, or have to do some weird stuff to them to make them fit their smaller frames. So we really customize them to fit and tailor to individuals.
You know, when we were in Arizona a couple years ago and we were doing that get together where we were trying the different versions of the three wheelers, the aftermarket version four strokes were very comfortable. When I got on a 250R after riding those, it was horrible. It was too small. And I'm not a
Yeah.
big man. I mean, I'm only 5'9", almost 5'10". So you figure I'm not very big. You know, a 250R should fit me just perfect. And it just felt cramped, you know.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I still have some 250Rs, and when I get on them, when I haven't rode them in a while, I feel exactly the same way you're talking. I feel cramped up a little bit, and just not comfortable. Most of the races that I'm choosing to do today are a lot longer races. I mean, the smallest race I did last year was the hour-long works races, and then obviously some of them were hundreds of miles long. So being in the saddle for that long really it just helps so much to be on a machine that's fits you and you're just very comfortable sitting on. Yeah, I just look back at the 250Rs and the stuff that I've done yesteryear. As much as I love the two strokes and love just the 250Rs in general, they just don't feel like they are set up for what I'm doing today with my size.
On the 250R stuff, I've seen people take and adapt the modern front ends to them. And one of the things I've heard is that the fact that that steering head will break off because of the extra leverage that the front end has. Uh, have you seen them try to adapt that to the 350X? Because I know they can adapt a better
Yeah,
rear
I
end
actually
to it. I just hadn't
yeah.
seen them adapt a better front end.
Yeah, I actually have a 350X that a gentleman here, Richard Mastis, built in Arizona for me that uses 250R geometry, and he put a 250R rear shock on it, and we used it inverted forks like you're talking, and we were able to gusset the hell out of those frames to get them to stop cracking with that 350X. I haven't. I've done the same with my 250Rs. I've gusseted and gusseted and gusseted, and I just they eventually break, and then once they break, you, I mean, to fix those breaks, you're asking for a lot, and then to getting a new frame that hasn't had any breaks, and then regusset that frame all up and try to gusset it better than you did the last one, I still break them. We're dealing with they're 40-year-old frames now. I mean, these Honda 86 250Rs, we're coming up on 40 years real quick. And so who knows what the history of that actual frame that you think you got that might look like it's mint condition on the outside. The inside of that frame might be rusted so thin in spots you have no idea what you're dealing with. But I have yet to be able to get a 250R frame to stay together when I put inverted forks on it. I think that my own personal opinion is that when you put the inverted forks on those bikes, um, it makes they are more rigid for sure. They do have longer travel in them than stock conventional 250R forks, but because of their rigidity, it takes that frame and puts different stresses on it that Honda never intended for that frame to have on it. And again, we're dealing with 40-year-old steel tubing. So uh, I've yet to have good luck on keeping frames together when I'm putting inverted forks on them. The stock forks flex so much. I mean, you could take a stock 250R forks and grab that front tire and have someone hold the handlebars real stiff, and you could move that tire 2 to 3 inches in each direction because the forks have that much flex in them. And I think that was by design by Honda. They knew that having that front end flex like that was going to make those frames last 40 years. When we think we're outsmarting those guys by putting inverted forks on them and modern stuff, we're not having very good success.
Well, the technology was coming in suspension. It hadn't even got really there in 86 in the motorcycles. It was getting better, but they weren't upside down forks yet. They were still the conventional stuff. And in some cases, they were probably too small for some of the bikes with the things they were doing. So there may be some truth to what you say about what Honda designed there, but are you looking for the best suspension technology for your sport ATV? Look no further than Elka Suspension, the industry leader in sport ATV suspension technology. With championship wins in prestigious events such as the Dakar Rally, Score, Best in the Desert, ATV MX, Cross Country, and Works, Elka Suspension has established itself as the go-to choice for athletes and enthusiasts alike. But they don't just stop at ATVs. They're constantly expanding into new markets, including UTVs, trucks, SUVs, pit bikes, snowmobiles, and more. Their commitment to innovation and quality means they're always looking to improve and adapt so you can enjoy a smooth ride wherever you go. Want to learn more about what Elka Suspension can do for you? Visit their website at elkasuspension.com or give them a call at 450 655 4855. They will always be happy to answer your questions and help you find the perfect suspension solution for your needs. Could you imagine? I mean, we've talked about this before. Could you imagine if the three-wheeler technology kept progressing? What would we have today?
Yeah, it is mind-boggling when you kind of think about it. I mean, just a little bit looking at what an 83 uh three-wheeler was versus an 86 in just those 3 years. I mean, it was night and day difference. And it's super rare, even in quads. Today, I race quads as well. To take any 3 years you could find in a quad and look at that difference, it's it's not as much as it was in the heyday of those three-wheelers. I mean, they were advancing light years in a year and a half. I mean, from an 83 to an 86 250R, it's not even close.
Well, you look at 83 was, I thought, a pretty good year. And then 84, at the end of 84, they came out with the water cooled componentry to bolt on there that the general public never got, but the factory guys did. And
Right.
and then they came out with the 85 as that was happening. And a
Yeah.
lot of people realized that those 84s with the water cooled kit were the ones winning the races when the 85s came out.
Exactly, exactly. And then 86, there's a lot more changes to the 85 to 86 than most people realize. There's a lot of stuff I see on the internet that says, "Oh, they're exactly the same, this and this and that." And I can tell you, I've owned both and raced both. There's differences. They were tweaking it still all the way up to the very end. I talk, as you have, I've talked to all the legends that were Honda factory racers back in '86, and they got a chance to see what was coming a little bit in the future, and they were real happy that Honda was still advancing those. Again, those little advancements that we heard about that were coming in '87, none of us were in tune to see that. So we'll never ever know. But yeah, just to imagine what 40 years of R&D on a three-wheeler would have looked like at the factory level. It would have been crazy.
I would have liked to have seen the up close and personal, the 200s that had the brake rotor in the center.
Right. Yeah. On the rear, you're talking about on the rear swing arm, correct? Yeah. What a cool idea. I mean, what
Right.
a what an awesome idea.
That would have been awesome to see, because your ground clearance changes. I mean, there's just so many things that get better with that, and maybe that would have adapted into some of the four-wheeler stuff that we have today instead of, that rear end design hasn't changed much, since 85.
Right. No, I mean, and even on the quads today, when you take a 1986 250R rear end, the carrier, the axle, the shock geometry, and you compare that to the modern day, the brand new 450 Yamaha,
Yep.
they're almost on point. The shock
Right.
angle, I mean, it's super, super close. So they were just so far ahead of their time in '86 with that 250R. It was a different time, a different era, but they were making drastic changes in a year, and it's a shame that our quad industry doesn't see that anymore.
No, Yamaha, you have to take your hats off to them. Those guys are building fantastic sport machines for the industry, and they're the only ones left. There's nobody else that does it. Um, Everything that I hear in the industry is there's nobody else, nothing's coming.
Right,
Nothing.
right. And with the rules in all the racing organizations with the three wheelers today, it, it it's open. What I mean by that is we can do everything. I mean, in certain areas at the highest echelon of quad racing today, they're not allowed to run hybrids in some organizations. In the three wheeler world, we can do anything we want. Sky's the limit. And there's fabricators out there today in the three wheeler world that are still evolving, still pushing the limits. And I thank these organizations that let us still race these three wheelers and allow us to have such an open template to keep pushing the envelope, because there's some amazing fabricators out there today that are still making tweaks to the three wheelers and make coming up with some great things. It's awesome.
It is. It really is for the three-wheeler environment. The shame of it is there's not enough media for the three wheelers, and there's not enough people out there pushing the three wheeler stuff. And in some ways, I don't think the three wheeler people want a lot of media.
Yeah, they're most of the people that are racing three wheelers, at least at the level that I'm racing, aren't your 18, 19-year-old kids. They weren't raised on three wheelers. They don't feel comfortable on them. They haven't given them enough time to in the saddle to feel confident enough to go race them, and that's a shame. But those that have had three wheelers in their life in the past and still are feel comfortable enough on them to go give it racing a try. Um, we're all out there still pushing the envelope the best we can, but what's really, really missing from the equation is the youth.
Right. I think ATVs in general are hurting from that.
Yeah,
When you develop youth ATVs, how are you going to get older riders or teenage riders to come to your side when you're putting them on motorcycles and that's the only direction they have?
agreed. I see these old videos of the 80s where, I mean, there was full gates of custom built two-stroke 85 cc Kawasaki three-wheelers. I mean, they were building these crazy custom little kid rocket ships, and there was hundreds of these little kids that had these three-wheelers. They were out there racing on the same tracks that Marty Hart and Mike Coe and Sundahl were racing on. And those were the kids that eventually got 185Ss and 200Xs and were waiting to get on those 250Rs to go get them, but the bubble popped, unfortunately. So most of them jumped on quads, and that was our first evolution of quad racers that were the guys that came from the three wheeler world and some from the dirt bike world.
Right. And but where did the allowance in the industry go that had machines that everybody could ride?
Yeah,
That
we're
went
missing
away.
that today big time.
We are. And I think there's a couple manufacturers that are going to try to get into that circle, but it's super tough. When you got the government involved squashing you, what do you do?
Yeah, and what I would love to see is some of these awesome fabricators that are making three wheelers to make some really cool three wheelers for young teenagers. I mean, if KO comes out with that 200 three wheeler in our country, and I know it's here. I haven't seen one with my own eyes yet, but I don't know how hard it would be to take that platform and turn it into a three wheeler. And all of a sudden now we got some maybe some 14, 15, 16-year-old kids that are trying to give the three wheeler thing a go. That'd be awesome.
So there's supposed to be a company called Patrona, correct me in the chat if I've screwed the name up, that makes a Raptor 250 knockoff.
There you go. That would be
And
a
you're in
cool
the
machine.
States, and it's here in the States. If you could modify that front end for three-wheeler activity, if you could just bring that machine out, see if it is adaptability to the Raptor 250. If it's good, then you can start purchasing those machines to ride. Um, they were probably nobody realizes that the Raptor 250 in the end of its career was made in Taiwan or China. It wasn't made by the Japanese. It was sold by Yamaha, but it wasn't made by them.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. And you touched on it though. We're lacking in even getting those 13 to 16-year-old kids on quads to go out and be the next generation of pro racers. So it's almost unrealistic to think that we're going to be able to get them on three wheelers if we can't even get them on quads.
Yeah, and you can't even get on the dirt bikes. Really, if you look at the dirt bike industry shrinking as well, maybe we ought to ban TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, and all
Yeah,
of that. Maybe video
that,
games. Get them outside. You know, when we were young, we
agreed.
were outside riding bicycles and watching our heroes on motorcycles, and but we had to go to the track to watch them.
Yeah, I don't think you can find in the 70s and 80s, I don't think you can find any person that was on a quad, a three wheeler, or a dirt bike that wasn't at least some stage of their life, some sort of BMX crazed kid.
Right.
I know I was one of those, and everybody I knew was. and talking to all the people that I've been able to talk to that got into motorsports at that age, they all came from the BMX world.
Yep. And the BMX world's still big. They just don't seem to transition from BMX to off-road.
Yeah, they're going to mountain bikes and now electric bikes. So
Yeah.
it's just evolving a different direction, I guess.
Well, the e-bike thing. So what I'm hoping happens, highly unlikely, is your local baseball field, right? They turn the lights on. They have baseball games, softball games, play soccer out there. Why can't we have a motocross track like that with e-bikes,
We definitely could, and I sure hope it happens because man,
e-quads,
it
E3
yeah,
wheeler, go-karts, and then the neighbors aren't going to complain because of the noise.
right, right.
Joe
No,
Tall
it's
from
I can see it evolve in that direction, and I hope it does.
Yeah, Joe Tall from ATV on the Man is the
Yeah,
one that brought
it could be awesome.
it would introduce a
Yeah, and those
whole new group to off-road.
100%. And in those places where, I mean, I'll use Arizona as an example, but maybe it's a better example to use Minnesota, where it's freezing cold up there half the year. Why couldn't they build a giant warehouse and have it be an indoor facility?
And if it's e-bike, you don't have to worry about the emissions. You don't have to, well, you may maybe a battery burning up once in a while, but you know, life's rough, right? Burn your
Yeah,
e-bike, tow it outside. It won't create too much of a problem. Um, yeah, they have all of the options. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the electric bike industry or the electric anything industry, but I get it. I think there's a place for it, and if we used it properly, it could grow the sport in many different ways.
for sure, 100%. And for those people that say, and I'm right there with you. I'm not an E fan in cars or anything, but I have had the opportunity to go ride some cool e-bikes, and it, it they're awesome in their own way. I mean, we can sit here and argue what's good and what's bad about them, but that's not what it's about. It's about, are they cool? Heck yeah, they cool. And are they getting better every year? Yes, they are. They're evolving faster than any dirt bike and quad is right now.
Yeah, the same with the e-bike motorcycle world. They're evolving really fast. There's supposedly an Egyptian company, I believe it was an Egyptian company that has that e-quad. And there's
Yeah,
rumors, there's
Jeff
rumors that,
Hinson Jeff
what?
Henson's been out. They make E3 wheelers too as a company. They're about the size of a 90-110. From what I understand, they're good for a good 2 hours on the battery. And I know Jeff Henson has gone out to Glamis with the company and rode those across the dunes and stuff. And so uh, who knows? Maybe that'll be the next three-wheeler phase. That 70 phase is huge. I mean, there's still, every time I go out to the dunes, I see tons of little 70 ATCs running around the camp areas, and some little kids, some adults, but that E phase could definitely just pop right into that world, and that could be the next big thing. Who knows?
It may be. They're going to try to race the Baja on that.
On that electric three-wheeler?
No, on the electric quad.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
They're
I mean,
have a quick disconnect battery system,
awesome.
and you know what? There was some. I don't got all the specifics. I'm going to try to look into it and get some information to do a story on it as well. If that's the case, I don't think they could ever win something like that this early in its stages because of the weight and the suspension. There's just things that I don't think they're ready for yet. But if they finished, that would be the accomplishment of the century. I mean, that would rock
Yeah,
our world.
100%. I mean, especially with some of these bigger quads. I mean, I know you've talked about it a lot, and I've been seen them in the work series. But these big 4x4s, the scramblers. I actually did uh, a photo shoot and got a chance to ride the new scrambler with Jeff Hinson for dirt wheels. The thing is awesome. Polaris makes an awesome one. Can-Am makes an incredible 1,000 cc, 100 horsepower one. Those things are 800 or 900 pounds.
Yeah.
So if you took one of those and made it I don't know if it would be much heavier than 800 or 900 pounds.
Um, what I was, if I think I heard Jeff correctly, it was in the 500-pound range,
Okay, I thought there were even more than that, but I don't know all the
500 or 600
statistics on
pounds.
it. But let's just say it's super heavy. That this 1,000 cc machine that is incredible performance. It's what all the R&D is going into in the quad world today. It's not going into 450s anymore. It's going into these 1,000 cc four-wheel drive machines.
Well, the reason being is because, you got a Renegade, that's your sport utility quad. The Outlander is your utility machine that your farmer or your camper or your hunter, your fisherman, that's what he's going to buy. But that Renegade, they're racing those things in the woods, and they're doing things on Renegades that I would never even attempt on a sport quad.
Yeah, they got their place. Incredible machines, and they're new in the development, range too. So what does that going to look like in 5 years?
Well, I think, Can-Am is streamlining some electric stuff that they're trying to prepare themselves for that. I also heard there was a UTV that was an electric UTV. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, no,
I
there
don't know much
definitely is. I
about it.
think it's Segway that makes an electric one or a hybrid one of the two. But yeah, there's definitely electric UTVs out there.
Yeah, they're just too heavy and they're too slow. They just don't seem to transition to the off-road portion well. We'll see. I mean, everything's going to evolve, but the three-wheeler stuff is what we're supposed to be talking about, not e-trikes. I don't
Right.
know how we got it. I don't know how we got diverted so much, but um, as far as the development of your new 450s, do you have another new build in plans? Something to look forward to in the 2025-26 season?
Yeah, I mean, it's not my own personal trike, but it's being built right now. And if things go well, I mean, I think you might even get your hands on it before I get a chance to shake it down. But we're going to be building a hybrid Honda uh, dirt bike engine TPC, fuel injected with the wide ratio transmission. It's going to, I think it's going to be the best, most modern three that are ever built when it gets finished, and it's getting real close right now. So it's going to be definitely in the race world this year. And I hopefully I'm going to be blessed to be on that team to be able to ride that machine. And I'm looking really forward to it because from everything that I know about the machine that's in its last stages of being built, I think it's going to be incredible.
We were always under a 50-inch width requirement. The industry has been. I noticed on some of the three-wheelers, your guys are running, 52 to 54 inches. Um, is that how do you skirt the 50-inch rule and get them to 52 or 54 inches wide?
I'm sitting, the one I've been racing in the work series is at 52. And going back to what we touched on earlier, in most of the organizations, they're letting us have carte blanche on getting these three wheelers any way we want them.
Okay. Is the width deal something that you have to be 52, or can you ride it at 50? Are you ready to be captivated by one of nature's masterpieces? Discover the breathtaking beauty of Antelope Slot Canyon, a natural wonder in Page, Arizona. Join us on a guided tour and immerse yourself in the mystical light beams, rich colors, and serene landscapes. With tours at prime sunbeam hours
experience photographer's paradise and capture memories that will last a lifetime. Comfortable shoes, a camera, and a smile are all you need for this adventure. Book your journey today at Antelope Slot Canyon Tours and let the canyon enchant you. Please visit us now, antelopeslotcanyon.com, for more details.
We're gonna have we gotta edit it here.
You're at 52 inches wash stability. It's amazing when you take them from 49 to 52, how much more stable the machines are. I mean, I think you had a chance to ride my bike too, and I think you felt it. It's an extremely stable machine.
Yeah, I did, and that's I was questioning it then, and I'm still questioning it. When you go to that 50 inches, is it make it unrideable?
No, it's still rideable. I mean, if I was going to go back east and race, in the woods, I definitely would make it 50 inches. I just to be able to turn a corner at 60 miles an hour on a three wheeler that's 50 to 52, you will notice a difference right now. It's huge. That extra 2 inches going around a corner at high speed, and a three wheeler is a lot different than a quad in the sense that you steer with the rear end a lot. So we always want the rear end to be able to break loose a little bit more than I do when I'm riding my quads. Because to be able to break the rear end loose at will, and you could do that with the modern power plants we're putting in them, it allows those things to corner um, super fast and super stable and just feels great.
I didn't think that you guys extended the swing arms back um, all that far, and the front ends didn't seem like they wanted to always come up like they did on the two strokes. What do you contribute that to?
Again, I think the 450 power, it doesn't have that hard power band hit that most of the two strokes had when we were racing them back in the day. I mean that same two stroke hit is the same thing that makes me smile when I do get on my two strokes. I love them, but again, I think for my own personal riding style, when I get on my 250Rs and I don't have the inverted forks on them and I'm relying on stock front suspension to make that front end come up a lot, takes the pressure off of those forks, and takes the pressure off of suspension that's not quite adequate, in my opinion. And that was the riding style that usually was the best, to be able to take that front end and lift it up over obstacles. Where now we don't have to do that anymore. The front end of the three wheeler can stay planted on the ground, keep us under control because the suspension is that much better. Our front tire will eat up anything a dirt bike will eat up and then some. I mean, our front tire is a lot more forgiving than a dirt bike front tire. So that even adds more plushness to the front end in the right scenario than a dirt bike.
Is it the angle that you guys have set the forks to? Maybe the added weight of the front end because your fork system and triple clamp system's heavier? Is that one of the reasons why the front ends stay down better with these four strokes, or is it just the whole geometry setup? Because
I
I'm
would say it's a
still
whole
stumped.
geometry. It's a little bit of everything you just said. I think the front end's a little bit heavier. I think that I run a +2 swing arm on my works bike, and in the desert I prefer a +2. And what that does is that allows me to use all the power I can get out of that motor and still keep the front end down. My wheelbase tip to tip on my three wheeler versus the 250Rs is about 2 inches longer, and it's just a bigger machine all around. It's wider, it's longer, it's taller, and it fits my frame. And I've learned how to make that package work for me personally. But that whole package also keeps the front end very stable, keeps the front tire on the ground way more than it did on the 250Rs that I raced, and the front suspension allows that front tire to track on the ground and keep us in control, where we can turn left and right anytime we want because that front tire is not in the air or light on the ground.
Do you guys run the same um, angle on the steering as a 250R, or is it a different degree?
So with the TPCs, they're building those frames from scratch basically, and they're able to cater that angle to what the purpose of the three wheeler they're building it for. So that angle does vary a little bit. Not no two are alike unless Bill Casey, who builds them, wants them to be that way. He can adjust the angle. So for example, in the desert, having a little bit more rake is probably a better way to go. Um, it's not quite so twitchy, but if you were going to be running a TT race, for example, on a three wheeler, you'd want that rake a little bit steeper so you could really get that thing to turn on a dime, where there's not many hairpin turns from Vegas to Reno, if you know what I mean.
Right, right, right. And most of the stuff's high speed anyways.
Correct, correct.
Yeah,
You know,
there's some in-depth testing that needs to be done, to evaluate some of these things, because if you're only 2 inches longer than a 250R, that's really not a whole lot. What are you gaining, an inch in the front and an inch in the back? I know you put a 2 inch longer swing arm on it, but where, it's not just in that swing arm length that it's longer.
no, it's the whole machine. There's a lot of little differences. Like I say, it's not a 250R anymore. We're talking about a custom built machine that he's done a lot of R&D on to get what works. And he's even able to move the motor forward and back in that chassis a hair or two if he wants to with the motor mounts. So there's so many different things that he's taken into consideration and done on different builds. And again, he's been able to cater it to what the owner wants it to be. If he's going to just be out riding in the dunes, he'll make it in a way that's going to do that. If he's going to do a little bit of racing, a little bit of riding, it's completely open book. Where a 250R really didn't have that. I mean, that the motor in the 250Rs, it was so tight in those. I mean, just taking those motors in and out of those frames, there isn't a much wiggle room there. So really, Honda didn't have that set up to move it forward or back an inch because it just didn't have that much room in it. But most of those guys that were the factory racers back then weren't 6'2" and 220 pounds.
No, a lot of them were, in 5'8" range, 140 pounds, 150 pounds. Not small men, but very light.
Yep.
All of them were in great physical condition. That's a whole different era, because when you roll into the two-stroke 250R era, when that's what we were racing, you wanted a guy, Doug Eichner, 5'6", 150 pounds, 160 pounds. Everybody that went to the starting line was that size. And then you get a
Right.
Joe Bird that's 6'4", and you're like, well, wait a minute. Joe, you're a little tall to be doing this. But he fared well. He won a couple titles. A couple of the guys there were some in-between sizes, but your super tall, bigger guys didn't have a more of an impact until we got into the four strokes.
100%. 100%. And again, on my bike, my personal bike that I've been racing in the Work Series last year, if you put a 140-pound man on that bike that's 5'6", that front end's going to get real light real quick.
Well, so it has to have a little bit of weight for traction and to make the suspension work too, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, just been so blessed. I mean, Doug Roll building suspension for the rear of my trike and playing around with different shock packages that they have. And he cut his teeth building suspension on three wheelers back in the day. So he's got a lot of years back then, and he loved the challenge of trying to make the modern three wheeler ride as best as he can with the suspension, and he's accomplished that as far as I'm concerned.
That's awesome. And that he works with you like that. Do you think Bill's got anything special in the works? I know about the one machine you're talking about, but do you think he's got something else hidden that nobody knows about yet?
I don't know about hidden. He built I mean, he literally just put it on his website, I think last week, and it's really cool looking. It's a 250 Honda motorcycle engine, 4-stroke, and a TPC. It's a custom one-off type build, and it's about the same size as a 350X in its geometry and its statue, from what I've been told. And it's really beautiful machine. I haven't got a chance to ride it, but I believe it's going to be in some of the desert races this year, and we're going to see how it holds up and how it performs versus some 450s and probably some 250 two-strokes as well that will be in those races. So it's going to be an exciting year.
Have you gotten to ride any of the KTM 300 stuff?
I did get a chance to ride the dirt bike, but not the three-wheeler conversion that you're probably talking about. I still just haven't. I've raced against those machines. I just haven't taken the time to really ride one of them, but it intrigues me. I mean, that 300 two-stroke motor is probably the best, most advanced two-stroke motor in any ever made, really. And they're putting that in a three-wheeler, and it's lighter than the 450 motor. So a whole lot of things are really, really cool about those machines. I just personally haven't had a chance to ride them.
Yeah, I am dying to ride the two-wheeler and that three-wheeler. Walsh has got a couple four-wheelers that he's made that are the 300 now that, man, if I was on the East Coast, I would be hitting those guys up. They have to be spectacular to ride.
Yeah, I mean, when you just see the size of that motor, the physical size of it versus the old 250R motors, I mean, the bottom end of it looks about half the size. It's got to be a lot lighter. I don't know what the weight difference is, but it just looks like it's a lot lighter than a 250R motor, and it's putting out just as much power and if not more than those did. And with the just with the fuel injection and the mapping that they've been able to accomplish with, and how they can adjust them on the fly, literally, what a cool concept. I just if I was going to build a two-stroke three-wheeler today, I would definitely want to put one of those in it for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the definite package. Like, just like if I was going to build a 250R, I mean a two-stroke ATV hybrid, I would be
Yeah,
using that motor. I mean, I'm choking on the fact that I'm saying KTM, but as far as a two-stroke motor that you would want to bolt into that package, I think that is your best overall bet.
I agree. And, you know, I think the Husky and the gas version of that motor, because they make a 300 in those bikes as well. It's the same thing. I mean, it's not no different. You know, paint
Yeah.
it red, paint it white. It's the exact same setup. So, that's cool that you can get a hold of those motors. They've been out a while now, so they're not as hard to obtain one than it used to be. I see those bikes that seem like they're in pretty good condition with low hours for sale now. That I think someone could grab a hold of one of those and make sure the motor's fresh or freshen it up and throw it in a quad or a three-wheeler. Super cool.
Dude, I'll take one that's wore out because we can rebuild it. It's okay.
There
I
you
know,
go.
I know a guy, you know, but even that, yeah, I've had some conversations with Mike and at Walsh Racecraft, and I'm in talks with a customer. We're compiling information. He may be sending me a motorcycle so that I get to do that. And I think it'll be just fantastic. We'll be building a cross-country version of it if we do it, because it'll be used in Florida. Um, I'm just so excited. I out of all the bikes I get to build, and I think I get to build some of the best in the world, and I am super excited about that. I still want to build that TRX 450R hybrid with the CRF motor in it. I have pieces sitting there. I just can't seem to get unbusy enough to work on it.
I get it. I mean, that concept that he has with that quad, that you can put so many different motors in the same quad just by changing the motor mounts. What a cool concept, and why it's taken this long for somebody to come up with that, I don't know. But that same concept could be done with a three-wheeler if the right person sets their mind to it, that knows how to fabricate and stuff. They could build a three-wheeler frame that you could put all these different motors in it just by changing the motor mounts and some slight tweaks, just like what he's done with that quad. So that would be awesome if someone would get that accomplished.
Yeah, you need a guy like Well, Bill has definitely the capabilities and the technology and the knowledge to do it. He's so busy doing the other stuff. I don't think he has time. By the time
Yeah,
he
you're you're right. He-
5 years, 6 years from
he's
now.
one guy. So you're 100% correct on that. Yeah.
And
You know what though?
let-
Let's not
go ahead.
underestimate those dirt bike conversions that people are doing. There's a lot of guys out there, and we haven't even talked about that yet, but that are taking the dirt bike frames and turning those into three wheelers. I mean, that's definitely the easier way to accomplish a modern three wheeler. I mean, do I personally believe that they got some things that are not great? Yeah, I do. But do they have some things that are really good as well? I could say there's strengths and weaknesses to taking a dirt bike conversion, and there's a lot of guys that have been playing with that the last few years and getting that figured out. We raced a three wheeler that was built. It's a Yamaha in Vegas Reno and won this year. There was a dirt bike conversion built here by Richard Mastis in Arizona several years ago, and Rangel was a part of the team, and he did some little tricks to that bike to make it awesome for us to accomplish what we tried to do, and it got to the finish line and took care of business. So and that three wheeler did some things really really good along that 580-mile journey or whatever it was this year, but it also had some things that weren't all that great. So
Well,
I think that's the case with everything.
so I have limited knowledge in writing them. You know that. You've seen a portion of what I'm talking about. And I
Yeah,
was disgusted with the one that I rode. Comparing it to your machine and Rangel's machine, not even on the same planet. And it still wasn't as good as a 250R.
agreed. No, that was a bad example in that time we were out testing three wheelers in the desert, but it was awesome that was there. So we had that to compare it to, because that day was special because we had so many different types of three wheelers out there. Um, and like I say, they're not all the same. They all do things good and bad. That particular one, we all kind of agreed, did a lot of things bad.
It almost took me out of the whole ability to ride that weekend because I have a shoulder limitation and it hurt so bad when I got off that bike. I could hardly even imagine. I could hardly pick my arm up. The bonus was I rode, I believe, your bike next, and it was so plush and so comfortable. And I was so excited about it when I got back, I forgot my arm hurt. And that allowed me to ride everything else. And that's why I speak so highly of yours and Rangel's machines, because the transition. So anybody that knows these guys, if you get a chance and Dave would let you take it for just a small spin, man, you have to do it. Or if you get with Rangel and you get to ride his bike, you have to take them for a short spin, especially if you're old school three-wheeler lovers. You will be mesmerized by this. They're that cool. They really, really are. I mean, man, the power delivery, everything was good on it. I just really enjoyed that bike.
Yeah, no, we've taken a lot of time to get it to where we are, and it's been years and years of evolution to get it there, and it's awesome. I love it. But do I think it could be better, and do I believe it's going to be better? I do. I think that there's people building three wheelers right now in their garage today that I know of that are trying to make things even better than what I've been able to race on, and I believe they're going to accomplish that. It's going to be baby steps each time, but that's where we are with this. It's still evolving. It's still coming up with cool ideas. We still have brand new modern motors that the dirt bike world is giving us that we can throw into these things. And I still get excited about thinking the newest and greatest thing that's coming out on three wheels. It's going to be cool.
A buddy of mine, I think I sent you a picture of that YFZR that a friend of mine built the frame for he took a YFZR motor and put it in a three-wheeler. He built the frame, set it all up himself. He does seem some things old school that I'm not super happy about, but he loves them and he really likes that bike. Push button, he took the fuel injection stuff off though and made it carbureted.
That's interesting.
Why he did it, I'm not exactly sure. I think he thinks it's faster that way. Um, but nothing against the gentleman's name is Bob. Nothing against Bob. He just is set on what he wants, and that's what he wanted. Okay, yeah, great, no problem. Could knock yourself out, dude. I
Yeah.
I can't tell you you're wrong, because I'm not the guy building it. So
Yeah.
it's a
You know,
beautiful machine, it really is.
there's some people that have gotten really good on a three-wheeler over the years that have rode machines that they've just learned how to ride and become one with that machine. Where other people get on the machine and they're like, well, how do you ride this thing? It doesn't, I can't get it to turn. I can't get it to do this and that and this and that. And uh, it's different. I mean, different people have different writing styles and learn how to adapt to different weaknesses or strengths, however you want to call it. And it's so awesome when you can see somebody just be well in tune with the machine, even if you and I would look at it and go, "Wow, that doesn't look like something I'd want to ride," or it doesn't look like it's going to perform that great. When you get the right individual that just meshes with that machine and has got so much time on the saddle that he feels super comfortable and knows exactly what that machine's going to do at all times, whether it's good or bad, the results are pretty impressive most of the time.
Right. And back to your point about the guys that are building stuff in their garage. You think about where all of this started. It started with guys in their garage. We're full circle back to where all the innovation started. All of the original three-wheeler stuff was all done in garages, it wasn't done at, companies like we have today. It was done by the grassroots guys that were learning how to do it. Some of them turned into big businesses and are in the ATV industry still today. And some of them were just, they never wanted it to be forefront business. They just were doing it because they loved three-wheelers and they wanted to make theirs better.
Yeah, no, it was motorsports at its purest. I think all forms of racing that I know of had their day like that. I mean, the little bit I know about drag racing, that was like that, and NASCAR was like that, and just all the forms of racing there is out there. At one point, if you go back in history, there was a bunch of guys in their garage just trying to figure it out, man, learning from their mistakes the whole way through.
Well, NASCAR, if you go back and trace the history, dude, it was the moonshiners that came up with NASCAR.
Right. Yeah, and that's super cool. I mean, I remember a documentary I saw sometime where they literally that when they raced the Daytona, when they were still racing on the sand down the beach in Daytona for that race, they the guys that were bringing their moonshine mobiles out of the hidden backwoods and driving them down to Daytona and unleashing them into that race. What a cool racing story that was, Chapter.
Right? Exactly. And through all of the racing portions, I don't know how about you, but for me, in building machines and being parts of teams, especially as the development, when you read the rule book and you go, well, it doesn't say we can't do that, so it must mean we can.
Right,
And
right.
and you do things that the promoters are scratching their head going, guys, you can't do that. And I go, well, it doesn't say I can't do that. Well, technically you're right, but well, there's no but. Okay. There's going to be a rule in there that says you can't do that. Well, there's 15
All of
guys
us,
combined now that did it. So what are you going to
right.
do?
Yeah, no, it's cool. And again, us three-wheeler guys that are still avid racing three-wheelers, it's interesting because I'm just going to use Best in the Desert as an example here, but I think this what I'm about to say can be used for almost all of the wonderful associations that are allowing three-wheelers to participate in races. When you get the hold of their rule book at Best in the Desert, there's rules for motorcycles, there's rules for quads, there's rules for side by sides, there's rules for trophy trucks. Nowhere in there is there a page that's designated for rules for three wheelers. And so when we show up to tech inspection the day before the race, you got this big line of motorcycles and quads in this line that we're all going through the same guys that are looking for things on tech inspection, and they've been trained. They know the rule book. They know what to look for, what it says you can do for a quad and a dirt bike and this and that. And they do a great job on keeping safety at its forefront when they're doing those tech inspections to keep us all safe. But when we roll up there on the three-wheeler, it's always classic because the guy who's in charge of checking everything kind of just looks at us and shakes his head and kind of just looks over a few of the little tiny more important things. But he hasn't been trained exactly what to look for on a three-wheeler. He kind of just takes a little bit of the world that he looks for things on quads and looks for things on motorcycles, and to me, go on through. And it's hilarious to all of us when we go through the tech inspection because we kind of just get that green card handed to us and say, good luck, gentlemen.
Well, what do you expect? They don't have a psychologist there, that needs to talk to you guys, which is probably should be a requirement. But yeah, I mean, they're checking to make sure that you got cotter keys and zip ties where they're supposed to be, and that the kill switch works, and you got lights. Okay, I guess you're good to go, right?
Exactly. One of the things that I can say though, because I think I represent the three-wheeler community when I say this, and it's awesome that all of us that are racing in these longer desert races, our percentage of finishing the race is the highest among all classes. For the percentage of three-wheelers that enter these long desert races these days, if you look at the percentage of us that get to the finish line versus any other class that's out there, we have the best finishing percentage.
Well, what I have to say to that is you guys better, because you've spent so many times, so many years, all the way back on the side of the trail, so many of them broken, that we better have learned how to fix on the fly better than the motorcycles and all the ATVs. That's just a pun, guys. I do mean it sincerely. When you're riding a three-wheeler, I think that your overall conscious look at what you're doing is a little higher than it is on a four-wheeler or a motorcycle, because you have three wheels, and when something goes wrong, it could be catastrophic enough to throw you on the ground. Where if you do it on a motorcycle or you do it on an ATV, it may not put you on the ground quite as easy. With a motorcycle, maybe, but on the four-wheelers, when something breaks, you generally don't hit the ground. On a
Yeah.
three-wheeler,
If any single wheel were to just fall off a quad, you're probably not going to do somersaults across the desert.
right.
But on a three-wheeler, I don't know if I'd want to test that theory at all.
You lose one of them wheels on the three-wheeler and you're going down.
I would have to agree with you there.
You're going down. I mean, it's just, I've ridden enough three-wheelers and spent enough time upside down to know that, yeah, you're going to have a problem, But fortunately, you guys have gotten it down to an art form, and you're working really hard. You got your team and the guys that you're working with, you got a good group. And it seems I get to talk to other guys in the three-wheeler world, and they seem to have it down as well.
Yeah, no, there's the three-wheeler community in general, especially when we're talking about racing. It's a tight-knit group. I mean, we're all out there, we're helping each other, we're developing stuff together, we're talking about things, our strategies and our things that we're doing prior to the races. And again, I think that comes back to what I just said is we really truly want to get all of us to the finish line. I just want to get there first. That's all. But I really want all of us to get to the finish line, and I'll do anything it takes to help all of us get to the finish line. And I think everybody can say the same thing.
Exactly. I agree. David Ham, as always, sir, it's an amazing conversation with you. I hope that you race for another 10 years and keep the three-wheeler thing going and keep being the king of the three-wheelers on the West Coast. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, don't forget to share us with your family and friends. The podcast is available on all streaming platforms, and you can find us on social media as ATV-TALK Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and Twitter.